Welcome to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, founder of the Reiki Business Collective and creator of the Build Your Reiki Business program, sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Greetings, welcome, and thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, and I am honored to welcome you to another episode of the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. In this week's episode, we're talking about online Reiki business without social media. Having an online Reiki business without using social media. But first, I want to invite you to a Reiki Business Workshop on Saturday, February the 10th at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, in which we will be talking about how to start your distance Reiki business. That is Saturday, February the 10th at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. If you can't join live, yes, you will get the replay when you register, and maybe something special as well. The link to register to learn more and register is down below. This week's episode was inspired by a discussion with a Build Your Reiki Business member. And so this week's episode is a special episode, one that I had not had on the list to cover, but indeed it is a great topic to chat about. So if you are thinking about starting an online Reiki business, or you want to start an online Reiki business, yes, definitely join us on February 10th. But you are thinking that you are not interested in social media, or you want to get off social media or limit your time on social media, yes, this episode is for you. You might be wondering, is this even possible? Well, yes, and it's not easy, but yes, it is possible. The first thing I want to encourage you, if you are interested in an online Reiki business, or if you have an online Reiki business and you are thinking that you want to have an online Reiki business without social media, the first thing I want you to do is to ask yourself why. What is it about social media that you're thinking that you really want to move away from it, or that you don't want to have social media for your Reiki business online? Or what is it exactly that has you turning away from social media? Because what I see very frequently is that oftentimes the way in which we use social media is what is having a negative impact on our social media experience. And what I mean by this is that so often what I do see is that social media is something that people are turning away from because of the way in which they are using it. And you may have heard me say this on the podcast before, but I do believe that once we become Reiki business owners, that our relationship with social media needs to change, and the way in which we use social media needs to change. And for many Reiki business owners, what happens is they start their Reiki business and their relationship with social media does not evolve, does not change, and they are still using social media in the way that they used it before they had a Reiki business. And what that can often do is leave you feeling burned out or full up on social media, frustrated with social media. And so that can lead to a desire to not want to use social media for your Reiki business, even if you want to have an online Reiki business. So the first thing I really want to encourage you to do is to explore your relationship with social media and how you are using social media. So that if you're saying, I want an online Reiki business, but I don't want to deal with social media, you are asking yourself what is really at the root of that. Because here's the truth. If you have an online Reiki business or you are thinking about an online Reiki business, social media is very helpful. Is it essential? No, I'm going to show you how in just a moment. But I do want to emphasize that having a social media presence when you have an online Reiki business is very helpful to your online Reiki business. And so what that means is that if you are turned off by social media and not wanting to use it, even though you want to have an online Reiki business, there are probably some things that you can do to change your relationship with social media so that you don't have such a negative reaction to using it in the first place. But if you do want to decrease your experience on social media, I totally get it and understand. Full disclosure, that will probably shock you. I had a very limited relationship with social media before I used it for my Reiki business. Yes, I will say that again. I had a very limited experience and use of social media before I purposefully used it for my Reiki business. So if you are thinking, I really want to have an online Reiki business, but I don't want to really use social media, okay. The number one thing that I want you to consider, I've got a list of things here that I'm going to share with you and ways that you can have an online business and grow an audience without social media. But first and foremost, you're going to want to consider your website and how you are driving people to your website. So number one is your website and getting people to go to your website. This is very important for any of us, no matter what kind of Reiki business we have, because for most of us, we are selling from our website. And if our website is like our cash register, then we want people to be coming to our website. But you, without social media, are going to want to have people come to your website. How do you do that without social media? You start a blog. So you have articles, you have resources, you have a reason for people to come to your website. You have a reason for people to want to use your website. And so your website then becomes a resource. And it becomes a resource, a reason for people to visit through things like a blog, through things like being a repository for resources, through videos, through things that people are searching for. And people are therefore coming to your website because they are searching for things that they are interested in, and your website is showing up in the search results. You can do this through a blog. So writing articles and having resources on your website that your ideal client would be looking for. So let's say that your Reiki business, you really want to be helping people with Reiki who are trying to improve their financial situation. So maybe you want to use Reiki to help people with their financial situation. Of course, that can look in all different kinds of ways. Maybe just getting them into a mindful frame of mind as it pertains to their finances. And so on your website, you're going to want to write about Reiki and money. You're going to want to offer some encouragement on money. You're going to want to show them how Reiki can be useful on their financial journey. So having resources tailored to that. So if someone Googles, can Reiki help with money? Actually, that would probably be a really great blog article if that is title, if that is something that you're targeting, can Reiki help me with money? Because that's probably the kind of thing that someone is going to Google, right? And so drawing people to your website through those articles, then you can help them get to know you through your blog. Having a page dedicated on your website to resources specifically can also be very helpful. And so let's say that you really like the book Money by Ken Honda, and you really want to be a place where people can find resources about mindfulness and money, Reiki and money. You could have a page on your website dedicated specifically to Reiki and money resources. And maybe, put on there the book Happy Money by Ken Honda, maybe even write up a little review about it. And then people can come to your website as a place for finding resources, not just your own, but others as well. And so your site can almost serve as a repository for resources on those topics. I also encourage having videos on your website, having videos that explain. And of course, you can house these on YouTube, but you don't have to. YouTube, yes, is a social media platform, but it's a little different. And so what that means is that on YouTube, you can do things like turn off the comments. I don't necessarily recommend that if you want to have and grow a YouTube channel, but you can use YouTube as a static kind of host for your videos, which means that yes, you can use YouTube to house your videos, but turn off that social media aspect of comments. You can also, by the way, on YouTube, hold all comments for review. And so you can have comments on your YouTube channel that only get published once you review and approve them, which, would take away any concerns that you might have about negative comments on your videos. And so you can have videos on your website, embed them from your own website, whether they are hosted on your web host, or if you use YouTube to host them, to hold them, to keep them for you, you can house them on your website. You can also put it as an unlisted video on YouTube and house it on your website, but it's still visible from your website. All kinds of things that you can do to have videos on your website, but this is also really helpful for you in bringing traffic to your site. Another thing that you can do, number 2, for having an online business without social media is to have a podcast. And a podcast is not social media in that, you don't have the comments. Yes, people can comment on your podcast on certain platforms. Yes, you can turn that off as well. But a podcast is very one way. Sometimes one of the reasons that people don't want to use social media is because it's two ways. They're afraid of the negativity. They're afraid of the comments. I want to encourage you that the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to get negative comments, and the more that you get them, the more that you, I don't want to say get used to them, but feel confident in dealing with them. But having a podcast is a way for people to get to know you and your Reiki business without social media. So that's number 2. You can have a podcast. You don't need social media for a podcast. Social media is helpful in driving people to your podcast, but you don't have to have social media to have a podcast, and your podcast platform will recommend your podcast to podcast listeners. So yes, you can have a podcast without social media, which will indeed drive people to your website or to learn about your Reiki business. A third way that you can have an online Reiki business without social media and to grow an audience is to be a guest blogger. And so if there is a blog out there that you are interested in participating in, that you are interested in contributing to, you can get an audience, grow an audience as a guest blogger on someone else's blog, on article platforms, maybe something like medium.com, where you can write articles. They will reach an audience, but it's not social media. The real key and the real trick here in having an online business, an online Reiki business without social media, well, actually any online business without social media, is growing an audience, attracting and growing an audience. It is harder to do that without social media, but again, completely possible. But that's going to be the focus here, is ways that grow and expand your audience outside of social media. So definitely that guest blogger one is very helpful for you to be able to get your work out there, get your ideas out there, get your name out there, but again, without social media. Another way that you can do this is as a podcast guest. So this idea of guesting, whether as a blogger or a podcast guest, but it gives people the opportunity to get to know you, to hear you, to learn about you, to be exposed to you outside, off of social media. Now, I will say, here's kind of a little bit of a trick. When it comes to being a podcast guest, or even a guest blogger, though to a lesser extent, these hosts, so the podcast host, the website where you might guest blog, want you as the guest to help promote the article or the podcast episode. And so they may very well ask you what kind of social media following you have. And they may very well say, oh, you're not on social media at all? Well, we're not interested in having you on. However, I will say there are plenty of podcasts, especially newer ones, that will take anyone and will love to have you on, whether you have much of a social media following or not. So keep that in mind. But as your profile grows, as you do more and more podcasts as a guest, or you do more and more articles, write them on your own website and gain a following to your own site, or guest blog on other sites, as you grow that following, more and more podcasts will open up to you and be interested in having you on, even if you are not posting about the podcast episode on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or any other social media platform that you don't want to be a part of. A fourth way is through article writing. And so by this, I mean in journals, publications, industry publications. So writing for magazines, Reiki magazines, for the Reiki Healing Association, or whatever magazine it might be, but writing articles for them on Reiki. And these articles first would be best in a specifically industry-focused magazine or publication, but they can go outside of that as well. So let's say, for instance, that you do have or want to have an online Reiki for money business. You wouldn't need or even want to limit yourself to only Reiki publications, but rather you could write articles for financial magazines, for money magazines, for wellness magazines. So all kinds of publications that you could write articles for that are not based on social media, are not dependent on your social media presence, and even will help to lend credibility to your practice. If you can have articles published in trade publications, meaning that they are specific to your industry or the industries that you are targeting, that really lends credibility to you and to your Reiki business. And of course, article writing can be powerful for anyone with any kind of Reiki business, whether it's an online business without social media, in-person Reiki business, whatever it might be. Any of these ways are going to be helpful for your Reiki business as well, for growing your audience as well. But if you're interested in an online business without social media, definitely these are some of the things that you're really going to need to focus on, because you don't have Facebook to post on, or Twitter X to X on. Is it still tweet? But you don't have those avenues available to you, which means that you've got to get creative and you've got to do some other things. There's one more that is really helpful that I will share in a later podcast. And it's not just helpful, I think it's essential. I'll share it with you in a later podcast. But these ways, the website, the podcast, the guest blogger and podcast guest, article writing, are all really helpful for you in growing your audience online when you're not using social media. Now, growing an online business takes time anyway, but when you're not using social media, I really want to encourage you that it's going to take longer. Of course, we'll talk all about that and then some in the workshop on February the 10th. Do indeed check it out on the link below. It would be an honor to have you with us. And of course, there are other ways to get the word out about you and your Reiki business and your services without social media when you want an online Reiki business, but these are a few of the most important. What are your tips for marketing your online Reiki business without social media? What are your tips for growing an online audience without social media? Please feel free to join us in the Reiki Business Collective at facebook.com/group/Reiki Biz to tell us all about it. Oops, yes, it is on social media. But you can also have a social media presence that is not on social media every day. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Like I said, my first encouragement is to really explore your relationship with social media and to ask yourself what is at the root of your reasons for not wanting to use social media while still having an online business. And are there ways that you can make changes to how you're using it that will be a better fit for you as you move forward with your online Reiki business? So I'm sending so many blessings to moving forward with any kind of Reiki business that you might have. As always, you can get the free Reiki Biz Kit at standingstoneshealing.com/Reiki Biz Kit. Yes, it does have some encouragement in there for online stuff, and I'm sending lots of blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Thanks for tuning in to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and send to a friend. Learn more about the Build Your Reiki Business program at standingstoneshealing.com/build. Sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business.